Okay. Community Beacon, we're here.
Yes, sir. Man, that sounded like it was coming through. Did it come through kind of strange for you on your side?
Sound perfect to me.
Okay. Something came through strange on my side.
No,
But
no, it
I'm glad
sounds
to be here, bro. Glad to be here. Yeah, man.
good to be here. It's a blessing. Blessing to be here. Blessing to be seen. This Community Beacon. I am Michael Seville. I don't really talk real estate, right, on this show. I don't think
You
at
don't.
all.
I think you have like
I,
once. I think once or twice you went into some depth on some things, and that was kind of the end of that.
yeah. Well, I still do real estate, guys. I want you all to know. So I'm here, your real estate guy here in North Palm Beach County, Florida. I'm gonna slow it down. Of course, on the opposite side of the screen is my brother from another mother,
What's
the
going
one and
on?
only.
Yep,
The
Joel
one and
Simmons,
only.
Tenacity Foundation. Yeah.
I don't-
Glad to be here with Michael Seville. So it's good. It's good.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting. All
Oh
right.
man.
Yeah, you got it. I don't know why my buttons aren't working.
My buttons aren't working on my side, man. I'm gonna jump out and jump back in.
All right. Guys, today, man, you see the title. It's What is Love? Thoughtful Gifts versus Guilt Gifts. Uh, we'll get into it. Um, man, I'm listening to that What is Love song, and I don't even want to sing because you all will laugh at me, but I think I am anyways until the brother gets back. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me
Oh my gosh. I'm
no
sorry,
more.
y'all. I'm sorry. I apologize. That's all my fault. It's all my fault. It's all my
When you
fault.
leave me
God.
alone, when you leave, I hear it too. So I know you played it. I'm not exactly sure if you heard it or not, but
You heard it? Could you hear the clapping?
yeah. I don't know why you can't hear it.
All
I
right.
heard it
Okay. As long as you
perfectly.
hear it, because it's coming across mine a little differently. It sounds like it's eating up some metal over here. But
All
it's
right,
all
no
good,
worries.
man.
It
It's
sounds
all
great
good.
too.
You
All right,
know
guys,
what?
let's go
That
ahead.
generally means that it's going to be a good show. We're going to have a good time. That's normally what it means.
I think we're having an excellent time. I think we dropped so many gems on these shows. You got to catch them, but they're
Mhm.
there. Let's get into it, brother. What is love? Don't hurt
What
me.
is love? Oh
Don't
my
hurt
God.
me. And now we're
I
on the.
apologize one more time. One more time. One more time. That's it, though. No more apologies.
I think we're on like the third or fourth, probably the fourth episode because this is the third topic, and a lot of these topics are essentially named after the five love languages. Although we take it our own route, to add some context, some more thought to it. Like, what's the point of being thoughtful if we're not thought leaders and leading in thought? So it's great to have the book, but the book, and I want to apologize. Last week I said it was insufficient. So sometimes I can be a little bit harder on these subjects. But it's not that it's insufficient, it's that we have to add the context, so we'll use it as the foundational floor, but then we get to add the context. We get to improve upon it and be productive and constructive with the information that's already out there, because I don't want to disrespect the brother by saying his work is insufficient when that's not it. He puts it out there for us to discuss and to have these conversations about. So shouts out to the brother. Look at Jomer. Shouts out to Jomer. What's going on, Jomer? What he said? Hey, what's up? So strong. Sometimes weak.
Love is like Wi-Fi. Sometimes it's strong, sometimes it's weak, but you always hope it connects. Yo,
It's
that
key.
great job, Jomer.
Connection is key.
That's on point. That's on point, man. But you
Well,
always hope it connects. Yeah, but we want to, I know that that's not the topic today, Jomer, but we definitely want to we want to be intentional about the connection, you know, so that we're not operating in hope. I think that it's paramount that we and I believe we've been discussing this too. I love the comment. I love the comment. I mean, that is quotable. You just gave us something that is quotable. That is quotable. But at the end of the day, if we're hoping that our connections are real, then we need to reevaluate whether our connections are real. Maybe they aren't real, and that's the reason why sometimes it's not connecting. And I'm only using that in the terms of the connection aspect of it. I know that sometimes love doesn't feel good. That's totally different. Totally different. And I believe that that's probably, that may be the space you're coming from. Feel free to answer back to us if you like to. But I feel like that's the feeling aspect of it. But we should always be connecting. And when we're disconnected, it's even more of an opportunity for us to sit down and connect. Make sure that we're aligned, because people, they have highs and lows all the time. But just like the love of God never fails, when we love somebody, it should never fail. And when they love us, it should never fail. So even in the weakest moments of our human life, our love should always be strong. And if there's anything that connects, let it be love.
That perfect love. That's
Perfect love.
that's actually the first two words on my notes as I came into this conversation, is that perfect love. And this is gonna, the intentionality of it is essentially gonna distinguish between a thoughtful gift versus, a quote unquote guilt gift. So where we starting?
Now, I love it. And I'm glad that I hope you're going to bring up that scripture too about how perfect love casts out fear. But yeah, let's get started. The duality of giving, y'all. That's what we're talking about today. The duality of giving. Love versus obligation, right? Giving is not just an act, it's a reflection. And just as we were just discussing about your intention, what is the intent? Why is there love? Why am I giving? What is the purpose behind this? And I know that we've been floating around the concepts that Dave Chapman had laid out in the 5 love languages, but we are definitely taking our own swing at this thing. This is not a carbon copy by any means. So we just want to keep that in mind. It is a reflection of intent, values, emotional intelligence, right? Emotional intelligence. At its core, it answers one of 2 questions. All right. So here's the 2 questions. 1, how well do I know and care about the person that I'm giving to? And I think that represents thoughtful giving. And then the second question is this: am I, or what am I, attempting to make up for? And I believe that there's more questions than that, but I believe that represents like a guilt giving or obligation. Obligation. So genuine giving strengthens relationships. And we have like this guilt giving that basically can erode trust, create unhealthy expectations. It can commodify relationships, right? We talked about transactional love or transactional relationships last week. And I guess here's my next question. How do we discern the difference, and why does it matter? So that's where we're starting at. This is what we're getting into today.
We deep.
All right.
We deep.
Shout out to Terrence Diggs, stopping by to say what's up. Happy Friday.
Much love, Terrence. Yeah, so let's get into it. Since the beginning of the series, I've been really talking about getting to know oneself, right? Because even before you give of yourself, if you don't know what exactly you're giving or why you're giving it, you end up in this conundrum. What was it? Selfless? Was it out of guilt? Like, what are some of the ways that we know? I definitely know what it looks like when it's guilt given. We spoke about it last week. It was keeping score. It becomes transactional. The brother said, what's the word you used? To turn it into a commodity. You said commodify.
Modifying relationships.
Commodifying relationships. Okay, I get to learn something for today. One thing for the day at least. So we start to commodify relationships. A lot of these things are based on what our culture dictates, what our uh, uh, environment dictates. And let's be honestly clear, because we have to observe the world that it is in now, is that most of us have turned ourselves into a commodity. So, and I always say, and I'm a capitalist, so don't take this the wrong way, but capitalism will, especially unchecked capitalism, will ruin everything. So, and this goes all the way back, because last week Jamar came on and he spoke about slavery and 3/5 of man. When that happened, white supremacy had a lot to do with slavery, but essentially was capitalism above that that really fueled it. Free labor in order to make these goods, in order to gain wealth, you know, so on and so forth, to gain power at some part of it. But it's the capitalism. And so we come from that thought. Like, this didn't happen in a vacuum. We didn't just start to devalue ourselves or commodify ourselves. How many times can I use the word in this?
Man, you remember back in Pee Wee Herman's day, how many times, what is the special word? And they would all jump and go crazy until Pee Wee went crazy in public, and that was the end of that.
How many times can I commodify? I mean, how do I commodify myself? Like, what is it based on? And so we tend to talk about manhood a lot on this show, right? And it's relevant and it's needed, and we need to have this conversation. We start to look at ourselves and some of the things that we speak about in regards to manhood, like lead, provide, and protect. And just within that self, depending on how we come at these three things, we can commodify ourselves. And essentially, a lot of this stuff is, you know, we can give out, right? Like protection. People don't necessarily need protection when it's commodified, because the police are supposed to do that, right? When you start talking about provision, then we start talking about money. Now you've actually turned yourself into a dollar bill. You've actually expended yourself. But our culture dictates that we take a lot of this to heart. Like, this is how we present ourselves. So when we start thinking about these thoughtful gifts and these guilt gifts, we've already commodified ourselves. We turned ourselves into a commodity, as opposed to what's really unique and what we actually bring to it. So how we come about these different thoughts, whatever the gift is, and to whomever the gift is based on how first we perceive our value. And I think a lot of us think that we have inherent value, or at least I hope we believe we have inherent value, versus how we can ultimately communicate it. And then the person receiving, how do they perceive this value? How do you have perceived value? So now these different gifts can change. So it'll automatically be a thoughtful gift if you know you have inherent value and you can communicate it well. This is, man, that's why we continue to grow. We continue to learn. We communicate this thing well. Just the thought of a person and letting them know that you thought about them is the gift, right? Like, you don't have to go out of your wheelhouse. I mean, I'm not saying that you don't get gifts, but just to say, hey, I saw a rainbow. This is to your significant other. I saw a rainbow and it made me think of you. If she perceives you as having value because you've communicated it and she's receiving it, that's all she needs. She didn't need the $2,000 ring or whatever it is, diamond, I don't know, whatever they cost. She doesn't need that, because she just wants you to have that thought. How did you communicate that thought about her? Like the thought, you remember Napoleon Hill talks about think and grow rich. The knowledge, the wealth is in the thought, right? So if you can provide that, like, that's the gift. Anything else is like, it could be a trinket, right? It wouldn't make a difference whether you gave her this diamond ring because of its perceived value, or you gave her one of those lollipop rings, a ring pop, right? Either way, this is of value. She'll never eat it. She'll put it up. She might put it up on and say, oh, yeah, there was a time when Joe came through and gave me this ring pop because he thought of me, because she perceives the value of the person around you. And this is a romantic relationship, but you can do this in business as well. You got to think about the most valuable thing is the thought, the thinking, the first thoughts. Really, is how I see it. Is to be able to have that, because you are showing that this person has some type of priority in your life.
Man, I love that. I love that. That's really in line with my studies of this as well. I think this is the solid foundation, the sound word that we've been discussing over the last few weeks about talking about sound doctrine, sound word, sound advice, the intent of it. I think that is where it all really does matter, right there, in the intent of it. There's three core motivations for giving by Adam Grant. He talks about selfless givers, strategic givers, and self-interested givers. And I think that just what you just stated, it kind of lays out where we want to be, right? Where we want to be. A selfless giver is you give freely, expecting nothing in return. A strategic giver gives thoughtfully, building meaningful relationships. And then a self-interest giver gives to manipulate or absolve guilt. I believe when we start to think about what we are giving, the psychology of it, I think that we all can place ourselves on a scale. Like, what is the reason? I think that this goes to the intent of the matter. What is the reason? Why am I doing what I'm doing? And I love that you kind of took it from the standpoint of the love or of the relationship, and not necessarily just like the thing, the object, right? I mean, that the object is a part of it, but there's a thing called the object of my affection, right? The object of my relationship, right? And when we get into the habit of giving, because we feel it is the right thing to do, and we feel so moved to do it, the intent of it is to actually give, right? To actually give is the intent of giving, when giving is the intent of giving, because there's something inside of us that says, I desire to give. Then remember, I believe there shouldn't be anything attached to that. And I believe when there's nothing attached to that, then it aids us in the long run, because now since there's nothing attached to it, there's no expectancy of it. I don't have to suffer hurt by giving what I've given and it being misused according to my thought process, right? If it shipped, if it you know if it fits, it ships. One of my philosophies. So when I give something, I give it without the expectancy. Now, am I perfect at doing this? No. Sometimes I've definitely given with some type of expectancy. And I've had to reconsider those things. I've had to go back to the drawing board. I've had to sit with myself and say, okay, hold on. I'm starting to get these feelings. I'm getting this emotion, something is starting to come up inside of my thought process. It's starting to cloud the way that I'm thinking about the individual that I'm thinking about. And I'm like, what is that? Because wherever I find myself, I check myself. So I find myself all of a sudden becoming cloudy in my thought process. Then I start to think about the psychology of what has been happening. Who is it that I'm thinking about? And what is it that has happened? If it comes down to the case of me having given something and I feel some kind of way because I gave what I gave, then that means that there was an attachment. Now I need to figure out what that attachment is. Why is there an attachment? Because listen, I'm not doing this just so that I can, quote unquote, give a more perfect gift to the person that I'm giving. I'm actually doing this because I need that to be settled with inside of myself. Like I don't want to, I don't want to find myself wrestling with the action that I've just performed. So I don't want to dive into feel like I'm trying to absolve guilt. I don't want to feel like I've manipulated somebody else. And I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm allowing myself to be walked all over simply because I am looking for something in return. So I don't want to lay down my guard and allow somebody else to come in my house and rob me simply because I believe that whatever, as it may be the case. And I know that I may have taken it to an extreme level, like nobody opens up the door when they look out the peephole and see somebody wielding a gun facing at the door saying, let me in so I can rob you. Nobody really does that unless they're really crazy or their friends are really crazy and they know they're joking, right? But from the standpoint of being blind, and we talked about this last week, willfully ignorant was the words you used, Mike. Sometimes we willfully are ignorant, and we allow for somebody to go ahead and to make a move in our life that we know is going to cause conflict, or we will do something in somebody else's life that we know will cause conflict because we desire an expected outcome. That right there, right? The psychology of giving, that is the essence of what we're discussing today. I mean, what do you say?
Go get it back.
Go get it back.
if you start feeling the way about something, go get it back. Right? Go get it back. There was always a saying, never give what you can't stand. We learned that. That was one of the sayings that was given to me way back in the day. Never give what you can't stand. And the reason why you can't stand it is because you have an attachment to it. Like, so whatever you're giving, whatever is attached to it, in this case, the expectations, this is what is going along with that gift. It has nothing to do with the item, because more than likely, most of us can replace these different items, right? But you have an expectation, like who gives their last? You know what I mean? Like, think about the person that gives their last, can't pay their, light bill or something because they gave someone $250, unless there was there was an expectation attached to it, whether they're looking for validation, whether they're looking to people please is huge. So all these different things. So go get it back. And think about getting it back. And you're like, I can't go back. I'm gonna look crazy in front of these people. Right there is a problem. I heard a brother say something recently that I thought was awesome, and I just bring it in as a part of this conversation. Was that he says, I'm not upset about the thing or the issue that the problem that we have. I'm upset that you didn't come to me earlier, because that's where the actual problem is. What happened before this thing happened? The chaos erupted. What was going on there? What was that stimulus? That's when you should have came to me. Or next time, that's how you come to me, because that's how you do it in perfect love. It's like, I ain't too much worried about where we at now. What happened before? What was that issue? Because that's what we really need to have that conversation in regards to. So that's that. I got to go get it back. You know what, an issue that we have with these gifts is a lot of people who don't know how to receive, right? So sometimes we give a gift because we feel that we need to reciprocate something. It could be some of the simplest things. Someone gives you something and you get it, and automatically you feel like you need to provide value. So either you give them something back, or you do something for them, or we're getting back into this transactional aspect of it. So be careful of that. I love what you said about someone holding a gun up, a shotgun to the door, and you look through the peephole and you don't open up the door. And I thought about the scene in Belly where DMX got let into you seen the brother when he came in and he held a gun because he was supposed to kill this guy, But the guy knew he was coming, the minister. He knew he was coming, but that gave him a chance to have that conversation. And it ended up changing this guy's trajectory on how he thought about things. Remember, it gave him a chance to exchange this information with him, because he's holding that gun up outside. Now, I'm not telling you guys, let me put this disclaimer out. If someone's holding up a gun at the peephole, I'm not telling you to open up the door, because you really don't have the information. But think about the person who allowed that person to do it. Like, I would, in my mind, is like, this is the kind of growth I want to be at. I want to be at the place where someone's having this gun at the peephole and I can open up the door or allow him in to have this conversation, because maybe it's meant to be there. Yeah, I think so. Just give them without expectation, go get it back, can't receive an attachment.
I want to add this right there, because we've been talking about it, but I know that example was, Showtime, it was movie time and whatnot. But I think that was a really good example for that scripture. 1 John 4:18, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear, because fear hath torment. He that feareth is made perfect in love. And I thought that was a great example of somebody who did not fear. That, in that instance, he had a message to deliver, and the message that he was going to deliver was greater than the fear that he had for his own life. And I think, listen, I don't want to. I prefer we didn't stay in that far of a distance, life or death. But some of these things may feel like life or death to some people. A lot of people that I have spoken with, when it comes down time to discuss relationships, it feels like a life or death type of thing, because we have placed this relationship on such a high level that maybe we, as the people that are in the relationships, are not even ready for that high of a level. In the 21 Irrefutable Laws, the chapter 1 is about the lid, right? And we have to have, in order for us to be in these types of relationships that we feel are too high, we have to raise our lid. We have to become a higher intellectual individual. We have to develop. We have to get to that next level to be able to really contemplate and to be able to answer what it is that's going on inside of our relationship. So development is truly necessary, right? And I feel like that's what a little bit of what we're talking about in this thing. You mentioned something multiple times, cognitive dissonance, right? And I feel like there's a bit of this as far as the psychology goes also, because when our actions don't align with our identity, as a quote unquote good person, we experience discomfort. And so sometimes the action that needs to happen at that moment may not align with exactly what you should be doing. And if that's the case, then your giving is in vain. Sometimes our actions don't align with what we believe or think our belief system, what we believe we should be doing. And so our giving can at that point be in vain, right? So if me, as as the man that I am, if I have witnessed another man give in a certain way without deep understanding of why he does what he does, then from the surface level, I believe that it is X. I don't know that it is Y, or that it is B, or that it is D. I have no idea if I have not done the research. So in my time, I may actually take it upon myself to replicate, to emulate the deeds that I've seen, the actions that I've seen, believing that it is based upon this idea inside of my mind that has no grounding, has no substance. It is not sound. It is simply me observing somebody else and attempting to emulate them because I like the results that I witnessed. And at that moment, I end up with neglecting my own self or doing something against my own self. My actions don't line up with my belief system. And it's because I don't have the knowledge. I don't know the root issue. I don't really know what was going on. And so now I have simply emulated a result. It is the equivalent of watching the end of a race and seeing somebody run through the flag or run through the tape with their arms held up and winning and thinking that that's all I need to do to win a race. It's the equivalent. I'm not thinking about the practice. I'm not thinking about the early mornings. I'm not thinking about the nutrition. I'm not thinking about the workout. I'm not thinking about how much time I will not have with family, how much time I will not be dedicating to going out to the movie theater or going out to restaurants and things because I don't realize the package that comes with that win. And because I don't realize the package that comes with the win, I simply go to the end of the race and I think that I've won by starting at somebody else's end. And this right here creates a really bad scenario when it comes down to the thought process of giving. We can be talking about objects, but what if we start talking about the object of my affection? Giving your love, and you've only watched external aspects or the end aspect of somebody else's love, and you believe it's quote unquote easy, but you don't know the trials that they've gone through or how many times that relationship has failed. And instead of breaking apart, they decided to patch it together and it came back stronger. Now you see the end result, which looks like butterflies and roses, but you don't realize that it was really hell and high water to get to butterflies and roses. And I think that is one of the psychology of the giving. I believe that is at the crux of it.
Yeah, that's a lot. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay,
man.
perfect.
I,
Yeah, I
I
think.
was I was letting you I was letting you do your thing,
Okay.
man. I wanted to see where we was gonna go with that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Listen, and then I'm deep into this Carl Jung right now, guys. The process of it. So we start to talk about, and if you all get a chance, a lot of a lot of issues can be solved by just building upon some of these giants that we have and not to negate some of this information that's already out here. You know what I mean? Don't reject this wisdom. Don't be willful, don't reject it. It's there and I'm making you aware of it. So anyone who has a chance to go check out Jung and his thought process on the human psyche, like it's paramount. He's a true thought leader. And so what you kind of speak to is what he would call like individuation, which is where initially like we take our cues from how we were taught. Most of us, and let's be quite frank, in the culture that we are, come from a feminine type thought process, and how we think about these huge um, topics, such as love. So the way that we think of love really almost comes from like what we would think in our minds what a mother's love is. And that's just one side of the coin. And then you got your father's love. And then even between those two, you got your unique take on it. And what's interesting is that you can have you and you can have a brother, like I got myself and I got my younger brother, and we can take them two different ways because our parents were different people for both of us. You know what I mean? So he's going to take his thought process of it and I'm going to take my thought process of it. So we have this individuation happen. This is where this thought process comes of, as to relate to what you were saying in regards to this race. Like, how do we run our race? You know what I mean? How do we go along our journey? And what looks like success to one person looks different than the other person, but in our minds we just get the win part of it. Like they won. And I'll tell you a quick story. Was I was taking Paul to the gym with me the other day, and he didn't want to go to the front door. So I'm walking him out. I'm like, man, we got to get in here. I'm running late with him. And I'm like, we got to get in here because we get a couple hours. And so I was like, let's race to the front door. And he says, okay, let's race.
And so we start running to the front door, and he's running, and I'm letting him go because I know this as a father. I know if I get ahead of him, he's gonna stop because he wants to win. So we get to the front door, and I open it up, and he's running, and he's like, he's like, I win, and I was like, yeah, you won, but I'm successful. I was successful. And so what I told him was it's more important, and here's the thing, it's more important for us to be successful than for us to win, right? Because the win is based on, you know, oftentimes our connotation of the thought is based on someone else, what they did. And how can you compare yourself to someone else? I'm not saying that you don't set benchmarks. Like, I mean, it's good to see someone else. So that's why we look at people's testimonies. However, we just need to look at the testimony from a successful point of view versus a win point of view, because we're all running our own race. Same way that we take it from this mother and the father womb. Like we're going to, I can't look at my younger brother Mark and see where he's at. He shouldn't look at me and see where, although we can use each other's as benchmarks. Like, okay, well, Mike is here. This is an awesome time for me to have this conversation. I'm looking at Joel. Oh man, I'm kind of stuck here. Joel is successful in this thought process. Let me ask him about it. He's going to tell me something about his journey. And there might be parts of a journey where like, yeah, I don't even think I want to go down that route. The brother done the heavy lifting for me, right? Like and I trust his thoughts. So he's telling me this. So I'm not even going to go in that route. Same thing with, he might come to me about something and I'm like, well, this is the way it went. He'll say, okay, well, I trust the brother. I'm gonna take it. But the brother still, it doesn't take away from him being successful or not, right? It's just that I saw this, quote unquote win that was in there. So we need to pay attention. We need to become aware of where we're getting our deals of this love thing, and whoever it is that we're exchanging with. And I really like to stay on self, to be honest with you. But if we're in a relationship, business, romantic, education, whatever, otherwise, mentorship, whatever, we need to take that into consideration to say that's their ideal of it. Like, how can I be and this is where thinking is like the most important thing. How can I come and put these things together? So I really love your explanation of it brother, in regards to, kind of seeing this person in the race that they're running, because there will be conflict. Now, you take it even further when we are talking about two people having this conversation at the same time. One person's relationship / marriage versus another person's relationship / marriage. If you keep looking over to the side to see what they got going on, you're going to miss all the nuances that you have all within yourself. Here, let me tell you something, and people might not like this, and it's an unpopular thought. You're not special. The person across from you is not special. And I'm telling you, once you do the research on this, then you're like, okay, that's why all these concepts can kind of come together. But you are unique. And the person that you're with, that you choose for business, romantic, or otherwise, they are with you, or at least they should be with you, because they love the uniqueness about you. Like, what did the Most High make in you that was unique? And I see it and I accept it. And that's it. There's really nothing more than that. You know what I mean? Like, we're living our life. What happens is, and I wanted to get to this point of it because I think this is largely important, and it also causes a disconnect, to go back to what Joma was saying in regards to connection. And I always talk about connection versus disconnection, is that we tend to get into what I call the hypnotic trance of life, to where we don't have any like this original, we're not given this first thoughts. We don't even have a thought, as a matter of fact. We get into this trance and this pattern of life that we're just going through the same thing over and over again. Remember that beautiful painting that that was bought when you walked into the into the art museum, and you bought that painting and it just brought life to you or whatever, right? And it was just like, I got to have that. How much is it? You place the value on it, whatever that value was, because that's how much you valued it, and you bought it, and then you put it up into your house. This is the hypnotic trance. After about a year, you keep walking past this painting, you don't even recognize that it's there. It doesn't make a difference. This is the issue that most of us are running into within our relationships, is that you got this partner, business or whatever otherwise, you stop seeing the uniqueness within it, and you just walking back. So you're not even giving. Remember, the gift is the thought, right? The love, the perfect love is it starts with this thought. You're not even giving a thought to it. Like, it's insane to me that you are in a relationship for however many years, and you don't take the time and this, and you all are like you. They know you like the back of your hand. You kind of know them like the back of their hand. Like, that's you walking back and forth. Like, that's what happens. So you know this conversation is coming, whatever conversation it is. It could be something as simply as you get home from work and it's "I miss you," right?
Mm.
What is your response to that? This will I'm gonna tell you what, people, this will save you a lot of money in these gifts and trinkets that nobody remembers after a certain amount of time. This thing that you bought, this expensive car that you got to buy in order to earn their love, or whatever the case may be. The giving of the thought of, I know when I come home, this person who, as if you're a man, they married you and they look at you a certain kind of way with respect because they have value for you. Otherwise, I would imagine
Mm.
they wouldn't have married you. And for you to know when that when you walk in the door and that twinkle of the eye comes in, and maybe they don't say it because maybe you're just a tough guy like me, right? Like, we don't say what is it? The cupcake type things, right? Like, let's say that. Like, you may come across that in the world. So maybe she may be walking on eggshells, she doesn't want to say something, but you can see it in their eye, and you don't take the time out to say, you know what? My first 30 seconds with this person, my first thought with this person, I'm going to make special every time. I'm reminding them of the value that I have, which is to make them feel, if it's a woman, definitely, because women tend to be more emotional than the feminine, right? That's a feminine is emotional. I'm going to make them feel unique slash
Mm.
special because they're special to me, right? Like, so this is the hypnotic trance of life that we tend to get it, and it's for everything. Because when you really walk outside, if we're talking about God and what he's created, and you have love for God and he has love for you, so he has love for you and he created all this stuff. Paul had to stop me the other day and was like, look at this flower right outside
Mm.
my door. It's a beautiful flower. Walk past it every day because I'm in the hypnotic trance of life. I'm not perfect. But for us, me and him, just take that time out, and now we're sharing this with each other. This flower. Oh, look, there's three of them. Like, look
Mm.
at it. Like, you become like, you really, we talk about becoming like a child again in that kind of regards. Like, you're looking at these things. So if you get out of this hypnotic trance, whatever it is, maybe it's this conversation that Joel and I are having with you, right? Like, maybe it's whatever it is. Like, get out of that and you need to pay attention to. That's the intentionality, like, to pay attention. This is I wake up in the morning and my first thought, who am I giving it to? What am I giving it to? What is this about? And if you can, and this is when we start talking about this is the gratitude. And we need to place that back in our lives, because the world tells us everything else is more important. The world tells us that the gratitude is, you need to buy this gift. Every kiss begins with K. The
Mm.
world tells you that you need to buy these different toys or whatever it is, when it's really about making that person feel a certain kind of way, and we're all guilty of it. So that's when, and I had this had this conversation when we were during Christmas time. It was like, during Christmas time or whatever, Easter's coming up now. Like, during Easter, what are we doing to stop the hypnotic trance of whatever it is? Because I've been to too many Easter um services, right? I've been to a lot of Easter services. I know exactly what it is. I almost hear the sermon all the time, which is, I think that's awesome. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. What I'm saying is, on that occasion, you as a man, me as a man, or whoever it is that's listening to this, could be a woman or whatever. What are we doing to have to get out of the hypnotic trance of this thing? Is just another Easter, and we're just putting on our clothes and we're just showing up in a certain kind of way. Well, how are we going to take part in this and make this constructive and productive, and a moment that we all can cherish, kind of deal? That man, remember, and something for someone to look forward to. I can't wait to next, Easter, whatever, because really you can do this every day. but let's just say Easter. I can't wait till Easter because you know, mom is gonna be making this meal or something, and we get to have a conversation. I can't wait to see her, or dad, or whatever it is. Like, we need to get out of the hypnotic trance of just doing things for the sake of, quote unquote, we have to do these things, and start putting some meaning to these things intentionally, right? And logically, because there's a logical pathway to this thing. That's why I say all these things are like really simple. Like, you can do all these things. It's really simple, but it's not easy to do because we are in the world of doing this, this hypnotic trance world. What do you say, bro?
I like it, man. I like it. You know, appreciate you opening up this that concept, this hypnotic trance world. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Man,
Napoleon Hill. Let me tell you, because I don't want people to say it was my own concept. Napoleon Hill talks about it in the something with the devil. You can go check that out. But go ahead, bro. I apologize.
yeah, I don't think I've read that one right there. I have to check it out. Just send me the
Yeah,
book.
absolutely.
Yeah, the word resonation came to my thought process with what you were talking about. It made me think about number one, Gary Chapman. Talking about emotional intelligence when it comes down to the going beyond the object. And I think that you really pointed that out when you turned around and you pointed at the picture. I think that was a great example by pointing at that picture and about how that picture means something when you first get it, and after time it kind of it wavers. I thought about a couple pictures. I have two pictures right here. They actually just say words. It says, "It is well with my soul." And I think about those and I think about how much it still means to me. But I also think about the times that I've come in here and had a challenge on my heart and didn't even, they weren't able to resonate with me enough to give me that leverage that I needed. And I had to find leverage through something else. And so, I just thought about that and I thought the word resonate came to my mind. But first, observation. And I think you pointed that out when you were mentioning that picture and when you were mentioning Paul pointing at the flower. And then when it went from one flower to three, and it's like observation means so much. And when we're in relationships, whether it be, husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, father and father and child, business, or some other type of relationship that is meaningful, when observation is neglected, I believe we start to tread into muddy waters because observation definitely helps us to notice when something matters to other people. And when we start talking about going beyond the object and actually giving for the purpose, the intention of it, then we need to be in observation. We need to be able to see what are those things that makes the other entity say, "It is well with my soul." What's going on, young man?
Uh,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
you asked me some. John wants to.
Observation. Just like seeing him go by. It means so much to be able to just wave, say hi, how you doing? Like observation makes such a huge difference. And sometimes I think that we take no effort or very little effort to invest in our time into what we have observed. We just bypass it. It's almost like being in the middle of a conversation and losing your presence. You go off into your own mind, your own world, and the only thing that you hear is the gap to insert your own new conversation. Somebody could have said, "Yeah, and so died," and you missed it. It was at the end of their sentence, and you absolutely missed it. And the
You said
first
hi
thing
to your
that
brother. I'm sorry, brother. I thought I was on mute.
it's all right, it's all right. And the first thing that comes out of your mouth is, "Hey, you want to go out to eat tonight?" something totally off the wall. And you wonder how come you're getting into conversations. Like, it goes beyond the actual object. I think that we've drilled that in pretty deeply in this conversation. I know that some people may have been waiting to hear about what type of gift we were talking about giving, but we've really been talking about the psychology of giving. And we've also been talking about the psychology of self, right? I think that when Mike brought up Carl Jung's psychology, the uh, autonomous process of discovering and becoming oneself, I think that was point perfect conversation. And so now these two things that I've mentioned, dealing with emotional intelligence, observation, effort or intent, relevance. So now when we start to give back something, is it relevant? When you answer that question, when you're in the middle of that conversation, your presence is there. If your presence is there, you're not just talking about axes when we're talking about oranges. And that means so much. This is the purity of that is so simple. Mike, I'm reverberating what you've been saying. Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. Let's not make this difficult. Let's not take a molehill and make a mountain. It's simple. Observe the other individual. Commit yourself to effort and intentionality to invest in the things that cause them the greatest amount of joy. Take joy in doing that. And then also, because when you do, it will be relevant. It will. And I think that gets to the last word that I was mentioning, which is resonates, because it doesn't take the car, like Mike said. There's been occasions when I've received a gift and it was something extremely simple, like cufflinks. But the difference is those cufflinks had thought behind them. There was something different, that it wasn't a special cufflink from K's or from whatever those other places are. It wasn't that they came from a different country. It was that they had customized it to fit me, my own particular personality. And ingrained in those cufflinks was something that I set at a high level of priority inside of my own life. When they gave me the cufflinks, they made me think to myself, you thought about who I am. You took the time to think about who I am. I'm like, yo, you don't need to be right there. You're getting too close. Step back. Don't act like you know me. That's not what I said, y'all. But it was just like, when somebody resonates with you, it gives you that moment of, all right, we are together. And I think that we've mentioned this in almost every single episode. How can two walk together except they agree? Resignation. It has to resonate inside of you. And that you can do that by emotional intelligence. You don't have to be born with, you don't have to be born with this. You can learn this. But at the end of the day, there's still a whole lot of intention that must be packed into that. Because if not, it can easily become manipulation. And it will show. What'd you say, bro?
There's a Bible verse when we start talking about manipulation and being manipulated as such, where it says something about the devil walks around like a roaring roaring lion looking to see who he can devour or something. And I always think about that because you can actually put yourself in a place with all the best intention, but there's a roaring lion out here roaming around that might devour you based upon you not really fully able to grasp these concepts. And they're not complicated concepts. They're not complicated. These they're very simple. They were already done. We've already had these conversations. Carl Jung, I'm telling you, to go back and to seek the not just therapy, but the right therapy from the right therapist who knows and understands what exactly they're doing. And you mentioned, brother, the observation of it. This is exactly what the Carl Jung was speaking about. He talks about projecting. This is the projection of it. Versus, so we tend to project, and I heard someone else say we tend to imagine things. So whenever someone's talking to us, we're not fully present. So we will start to imagine and we start to projecting versus observing these things for what they are. But before we can even, we think we're observing, but we already put our biases into it. So now this person says something and we take it a whole different way. Sometimes we're not even listening, or sometimes we think this person is not saying what they're saying because we don't really think about them how they actually are. We imagine them to be something of what that we've created, we've projected, and we're trying to make them into something that they aren't. That's not love at all. So now you're buying these gifts, these cars, because you're saying that this is what this person wants. And meanwhile, your children, you thinking this is what they want, and they say, "I hate you, Dad." What? What did you say? You didn't spend time with me. Wait a minute. I bought you. Remember when I bought you this car? Remember when I put braces in your mouth? Remember when I put but you weren't there for me, right? Like you weren't there for me. You did it. That's how this conversation happens because we project and we imagine that this child or woman or business partner is thinking the way that we think, and we've put them in a place to say we were fitting them into our box. And everybody is not that way. They're unique in their own way. That's why we need to take time to observe the uniqueness and not only just observe it, but love them for it. This is when we start talking about loving the negative part of people. The negative part is a part of them. It's the uniqueness of them. You gotta have some type of love for it. And that has nothing to do with not correcting it, but you don't correct it. Um, you mentioned the focus and the effort. Take time out of the equation. I always say this. I don't believe in time. Take time out of the equation. It's about focus and effort. It doesn't take much time for me when we're talking about time as a concept for me to notice this artwork on the wall. It takes focus and effort. So all I need to do, and it could be for 1 second. And I'm gonna tell you what the coldest thing is. It's just the breath. Take it in. Very, very simple. And feel good about it and let it go. That's all it takes. I listened to a guy who was talking about Abraham and Sarai and why God put the H in their names. And when you go back and look up the H stands for like the breath, like that. The breath is like one of the most. It's like one of the most important things that we don't even pay attention to it. When they start to teach you meditation, they start telling you to take these breaths, and you start and it's the simplest thing that you can make the adjustment to that changes your entire viewpoint in life. It could change everything. You ever heard someone, oh, do box breathing? It's just breathing, right? Like we can make it into these different concepts so that you can become aware of it, but it's just breathing. And tell you what, stop doing that, right? Stop taking the breath. And see how far that gets you. I think it's also important for us, and I'm really gonna work through this, and I'm gonna wait for the brother and I to get some time because man, Monday I just had like one of those awakening moments, and I didn't want to say anything to anybody. I got on the phone and I spoke to my dad for like 3 hours, and we were going back and forth with it, which I love because I'm able to bounce things off of him in regards to his ideal of it. Because he has a lot of time, so he gets to put a lot of focus and effort on these different things. So I love it. And then he has like my stubbornness, so he's like, "Oh no, no!" So we get a chance to go back and forth with it. I really want to talk to the brother about it. I think this is going to be important. I think this is going to be a focal point on kind of where I'm headed with a lot of this stuff, is because I've been afforded it. right, is really a set point, because we often speak about due diligence,
Mm.
and it's far easier for you to have your standards and your information and take good counsel and bring people in, whether they're business partners, romantic partners, whatever. It's great to have that, but some of us aren't at that. We never had that chance, right? Because you got to think, we've been indoctrinated, we've been given so much information since we were in the womb. We've been around certain conversations, we've been taking it all in. Some psychoanalysts or some people would say that your uh identity, quote unquote, has already been made by the time you're 7. And then, once you start to become aware, you spend almost the rest of your life trying to get back to that set point, which is what I call the set point. What does that look like outside of what were the narratives that we've had? A lot of people don't take the time, the focus, and the effort to delve into these concepts. Like, I definitely know I have, and I know my dad is delving into it, and we all have our biases still. But to be able to set these different things aside, to be able to have two conflicting ideals in your mind at one time, and not, just be totally against all these different things. So what is like what is a person's actual set point where you're not necessarily thinking about, your job, your kids? Like I said, I'm not married, so I don't know what it's like. So not unfortunately, I'm just not married, so I don't know what it's like to actually bring that together, because that adds a different factor to it. So that's a thought process that we possibly could have. But what is it like for you to, when in regards to the individuation process that Young talks about, be understanding self? Like, what is the actual set point when we just give it all away? And what stops us from getting there, which is fear. And so what came up in my mind this morning was a verse. You guys know I read the Bible every day, because that's I've been indoctrinated as such. And it's not a bad thing. It's probably one of the best books you can have. It is so much information in there. Um, it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, or is it the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord? It's one of them.
Yeah.
The brother gonna catch me on that one. So then I started saying, I'm thinking in my mind, because I'm having this logical thought. I'm like, well, what is it? And then, brother, you just brought something up a second ago. You said somebody gave you these cufflinks, and you know that they put thought into it. And then you mentioned something. I mean, it was kind of, it was jokingly, however, it brought up that thought. It was like, oh, what is it? This person think they know me, right? And for a lot of people, that can be a scary thought. I heard Jay-Z say, you know how much conflict happens because someone says, "What you looking at?" And I was thinking today that I might get in trouble. Like, if I ever get shot, it's because I was just looking at somebody, right? And they caught me looking. But he says, they say, "What are you looking at?" And that's because, oh, you're seeing me, and I don't necessarily want you to see me. And if someone sees you, I spoke about this, the uniqueness of you, that's like a part of, and it appreciates it. They see the uniqueness in you and they appreciate it, which we should all be doing anyways. Like, I look at that brother and I'm just appreciating, the divineness within him, right? Like I appreciate that. Otherwise, if I didn't see that, I don't know what, right? But I can see that and say, or see the greatness in this person. That might land better for some people. You can see the greatness in that person, but a person automatically we're places where people are like, well, what you looking at, in some type of negative way, because I happen to be staring at this person. I'm just like, man, I can, and I do it. I'm like, man, I can see the greatness in this person. Hey, the person that never said a word to me, right? Like, and I know this happens to a lot of people, but I can articulate it and communicate it. I'm looking at you because I'm just like, man, there's something there. I hope, I wish it could be quicker, but I don't have that gift. There's something there. What is it? And then I do it, and then I'll strike. That's why whenever I go out, something happens for me, because I'll look at a person and I'll say, there's something there, and I'm like, man, there's something. And then the person starts to speak, and then it's revealed to me, like, okay, there it is. But it's their set point, and some people won't even let you get that close, which is the part of love. So it's interesting how we get to certain points and then we become fearful of it and then we draw back. Well, if isn't that the beginning of wisdom, why are we drawing back? If that's the beginning of it, if fear of the Lord is that. But anyway, so that was kind of what I was thinking on. I know we got a time thing. I think I took the brother over. My apologies. I know you
No,
got to
man,
go. I know you got to go. But I think this
we all
set,
right.
yeah, we can get to this set point to where, because we always talk about, oh, we need to get together. We need to get together. Okay, fine. Lee Fuller say, don't get together. Well, we need to get together. We need to get together. Okay, fine. But then we get together, and then right when we on the precipice of this thing, right? Like right when we're on the precipice of the connection part of the person, we become fearful. And I'm gonna tell you how you know, because sometimes the fearfulness starts to come off as complaining. The fearfulness will start to come off as, a roadblock. We can't get past this. I need to get rid of this person. I need to get this person out of my life. I need to do X, X, and O. You don't need to do none of that. Not when you're coming from a place of love. What you got to do is you got to go deeper into the love, because it's all relevant. Everything this person has is relevant. But however, how do we communicate with this person to get them to the set point to say, okay, you also need to get past this part? Or, everybody has their own journey, but here are some ways that you can use in order to get past this part. And I'm sure it's already all been done, but just to bring it all together, I think it'll be monumental. How do we get to our set point? Right. All right, I'm done.
I love it. I love it. I would say, just in answering a little bit of that, I think one, self-audit. The saying I got is, wherever I find myself, I check myself. So just figure out what your intentions truly are. I think it's so important. Know what your intentions are. I think moving from material to meaningful, super important, meaningful connection, and, detaching from the need to receive something in return.
Yeah.
I think that means something. Those are three things that I can think of off, just that I can come up with right now. Is just like those three things, just know what your true intentions are, be meaningful about what you do, intentional about what you do, heartfelt about what you do, and not needing anything in return. Two huge things. I'm sure there's more as far as learning that. But man, I like that. I like the whole point, the whole perspective of drawing in to your set point. I think that's where it's at. Man, yeah. And you were diving into that Proverbs, and maybe one day we might go through that. I know that Proverbs, the first chapter of Proverbs, is such a meaningful proverb. At first, it is to me. There's so much to be gained in it, and Proverbs 9 and 10 is where the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. But that one in 5 and 1 in 6 and 1 in 7, they're heavy. There's much there to just like learn from. And we mention so many people's names from time to time, so many different books. But I always seem to find that there is some piece of these scriptures in what they are teaching. That's what I found. That no matter who we're studying at the time, whoever is breaking down these complex ideals, at the root of it, I have always found scripture. Scripture is still there. So I think that that's super important. I love this, brother, and I know we have come up on time. I think it's been time well spent. I think that every gift carries a message, so let's just make sure that the gifts that we are giving are delivering the message that we desire to be delivered, and that the intention of our heart is filled with meaningfulness and truth, that we're staying humble, staying mindful, and that we're developing relationships instead of destroying them. I
Amen.
think that makes a huge difference in the results that we get, because simply seeking results, I don't believe that that is enough all by itself. But when we give and we do simply because we believe that our actions and our intentions are aligned and that we're doing the right thing, we don't have to look for what's on its return. But granted, it's coming. I recall one scripture where it said in the book of Ecclesiastes, cast your bread upon many waters, and in not many days it shall return hence. It doesn't mean that it's coming back to you in the same form that you sent it out, but that what you need is already in preparation. It's returning to you. So don't send it eastward and look for it to come back from the east, because it may come from the west, from the north, from the south, from below, from above, from within. But when it gets to you, you will know that that was meant for you.
Amen. Let's go. Awesome show, brother. Well spent. Time well spent.
Time well spent. All right.
We'll see you all next week. Peace.